In most pieces of media, villains are an integral part of the story. They can serve as challenges for the protagonists to face, or a vehicle that pushes the story in a specific direction. Throughout the development and release of Hazbin, there wasn't really an overarching villain until Adam was introduced. Since the finale of the show, Adam has actually been sidelined in favour of discussions surrounding a different character called Valentino. In my time in the fandom, I've never seen a character's discourse turn sour so quickly until it happened to Valentino. It's actually left the confines of the show to the point where the voice actor of the character and fans who like him are getting harassed. I think it's about time that I talk about Hazbin Hotel's most hated character, Valentino. Before we can talk about the fall, it's important we look at the rise. Valentino started out life as two separate characters. I've covered this in a short you might have seen before, but his design was based on an old OC from Vivzie's friend Faustis called Tycho. For a brief period, Tycho dated Angel Dust, and Viv and Faust had a Tumblr blog where you could ask them questions. From the various art pieces, the relationship looked quite sweet, with the pair kissing frequently. Eventually, Faust left Hazbin. However, years before this, Tycho was labelled as non-canon. Instead, Vivzie created a new character called Husk. He was a gift from her younger sister Maritza, and Husk was to be Angel Dust's best friend, as well as a companion for him. Eventually, Vivzie built upon Angel's backstory, shifting him to be a sex worker who works under a pimp. When designing Val, she used some of the concepts from Tycho, such as his charismatic aura, tall stature, feathered hat, and colour scheme. Vivzie took another unnamed character that we can see in a couple images and used his general aesthetic as well, such as his one-eyed heart monocle and cigarette. And lastly, Viv took aspects from a character called Pillar from her cancelled Allison project. Pillar was a large moth, so this is where Val got his moth traits from. Pillar also used a hookah to smoke from and has this red smoke that follows him around. All of these concepts were combined to create Angel's boss Val, who was named after one of Vivzie's family cats that passed away in 2016. We first saw Valentino during a brief segment in the Hazbin pilot, alongside Vox and Velvet. We could see a phone conversation between Val and Angel as well. Val is asking Angel to get his money. This is referring to the Angel comic, which I'll discuss shortly. At the time, little was known about Val, other than the fact that he's Angel's boss, he owns the adult studio, and the fact that he's an overlord. A big chunk of Val's characterization came from the Dirty Healing's Prequel Comic. In the comic, Angel is sent to do one of Val's deals, but it goes south and Angel kills everyone. When Valentino arrives to pick up Angel, we see him speak finally. All of Val's key traits are present. He's a pimp, so he's always surrounded by attractive women. He travels around in limos and has his signature red smoke. His drooling saliva is present, and his most notable trait is the way he talks to Angel. He's abusive and is almost bipolar. He love bombs Angel, calling him Angel Cakes, Babe, and Sweetheart. However, his personality immediately swaps, and he becomes angry, shouts at Angel, and grabs him. Since Angel left the studio without Val's permission, Val tells him to work on the street for the night to make up for the time he missed since he wasn't recording at the studio. As you can see from the comic, this is more or less the same as how Valentino ended up in the actual show. I looked at some old posts by fans back when the Hazbin pilot and the comic came out. Every post I saw was people discussing how Val is Angel's pimp, and how a lot of people like the fact that he's clearly a rude jackass. I wasn't able to find any negative posts at all either. So moving into 2020, we got the release of the official Instagram accounts for most of the cast. I've covered these in depth in previous videos, but they were ran by members of the team and would post photos and interact with each other. The team members behind them were privy to the lore of the show and canon info, which fans didn't know about yet. So these Instagram accounts actually revealed a lot of info about the show. Vox, Val, and Velvet all had their own accounts, where they post various photos together. It was through these posts that we found out that Vox and Val have an on and off again type of relationship. There's a couple important posts that I want to mention. In one, Valentino punches Vox and breaks his screen because he messed up his fast food order. A day later, Vox made his own post calling Val an ungrateful rat because he has to buy a new screen. These posts clearly articulated that Valentino was an abusive character since he assaulted his partner. At the time, fans didn't really care though and just wrote this off as Val being Val. Valentino had a pet dog called Queef, which we saw in a couple other posts. Val found him extremely annoying, and in another post he aims a gun at Queef and shoots him. Queef died, obviously. So this again just reaffirmed the type of person Val was. He showed no regard for those around him, even going as far as to kill his own pet for entertainment. Fans still loved Val, however, and I think one of the main reasons for this was the built-up fan perception of him. I think that the comic dub series from Paranoid DJ is a good example of this. In these dubs, Val was given a deep, authoritative voice, which was almost seductive. These dubs got millions of views, and there were plenty of fans who were first to find out about the character from them. As a result, they had this romanticized view of Val. This isn't anyone's fault, of course, but it'll be relevant later when I talk about the fan backlash to the character. In the same month as the release of the comic dub series, the Addict music video released. This fully animated video put Angel in centre stage, with Valentino being seen throughout. It showed Angel's hardships and how he hates his job and boss, but he has hope for tomorrow. We again see Valentino's personality on full display. He uses his smoke and contract to force Angel to do his bidding. At the end of the music video, we see one scene where Valentino essays Angel during a flashback in the mirror. This was definitely the most evil thing Val has done this far, and again highlighted the type of character he was. After the release of this video, the fandom had a knee-jerk reaction. The reputation of Val completely flipped from being adored to hated. There were so many fans that were genuinely surprised that Valentino wasn't awful character, which feeds into what I said before. They had a romanticized view of the character based on what they saw in the fandom. So when they saw more Val, they got extremely upset and started attacking the character and any fans who like him. This is very surprising because, as I've explained throughout the video, Valentino was always portrayed this way. It's just that a lot of fans headcanoned him and then got upset when he wasn't the character they thought he was. So from this point on, Valentino was seen as the first main villain of the series. He became the most hated character in the fandom, and this label would persist into the future. Once the show officially came out, we got a lot more Val scenes, since the V's were integral to the story. Episode 4 in particular really kicked the hornet's nest. As you know, this episode focuses on Angel Dust and Husk, and it's easily the most controversial episode of the whole series, which is extremely surprising because to most viewers this episode was actually one of their favourites. It's extremely highly rated. For example, on IMDb it's rated the second best in the series, just behind the finale. The episode has the Poison song where we see Valentino essay Angel several times. I won't dwell on this too long since we've all heard it before, but the reception to this exploded like a hand grenade. A lot of people, especially over on Twitter, were extremely upset about this scene. They said it shouldn't have been made and that it romanticized essay. People also brought up some controversy related to Vivzie and one of the staff members who worked on that scene, so things were just wild. I talked about this scene in particular during my review of episode 3 and 4, and my stance hasn't changed. I think the scenes were handled well and didn't romanticize essay at all. If you hate Valentino, then that means the show and his voice actor did a great job. There were a lot of people who didn't actually care about the show and used this episode as easy ammunition to bash the show and fans of it. If you don't like the show or that episode, that's completely fair. But to go as far as to label fans of the show as SA supporters or saying that they romanticize it is complete nonsense. I would have expected casual viewers to hate that episode and for only fans to like it. But that's not the case, and the ratings prove this. Since the release of Masquerade, there was obviously a lot of hate aimed directly at Valentino. Only this time it was a lot worse because there was someone else to send hate to, being Val's voice actor Joel Perez. I think Joel did an excellent job as the character and most fans would agree with me. However, the same group of Twitter users I mentioned before put Joel in their crosshairs and harassed him. YouTuber Iox made a great video on the topic, which I'll have linked below if you haven't watched it yet. Joel had to make several posts and videos talking about the situation, with people tagging Joel in their posts talking about how much they hate Valentino, as if Joel has anything to do with it. There were a lot of users who also couldn't separate fact from fiction, so they'd send angry comments to Joel as if he was literally Valentino. They seriously thought that Joel and Valentino were the same person, which just shows how stupid some people online are. Iox also talked about another issue where one cosplayer was harassed at a convention by some fans. They again couldn't separate fact from fiction, so were unleashing their vitriol on the cosplayer as if they were actually Valentino. As I've explained, the discourse surrounding Valentino was just toxic at this point. Anyone who liked the character or cosplayed as him was sent harassment. It would almost put you off talking about him at all, because if you did, it's likely some rabid person would get into a battle with you over it. All of these interactions are unfortunate, and it's just the sad reality that a lot of people online are just really weird and can't act like normal people. So from start to finish, I think you can see the progression of Valentino's character. He's gone from loved to hated, and it reminds me of another character called Jax from the Digital Circus that I covered in a video the other day. Just like Jax, I think Val is a victim of fandom headcanoning. They viewed the character differently from how he was canonly portrayed, so when they saw more of him, they got extremely upset. The difference is that Valentino was openly disliked since at least mid-2020. It's just that the hatred for Valentino jumped tenfold once the show finally came out and people saw more of him. He was always this vindictive character who you're supposed to hate. People unfortunately today can't handle these sorts of discussions with care. So if you like an evil character, these people would say you're just as bad as them. It's especially confusing because these sorts of conversations never existed years ago with characters like Darth Vader or Sauron. It sprung up because of terminally online people who can't separate fact from fiction. So that's everything I wanted to cover, really. I think Val is an interesting character with a cool design, and I'm interested to see his story unfold in season 2. I've made a bunch of shorts about his history, so I thought this video would be a good way to combine them all together. We're also discussing how the fandom's perception has shaped the character over time. I do feel like the discussion surrounding Val is intrinsically attached to him now. So the toxic discourse and hate will continue into the future and it can't really be resolved. So what do you think? Do you like Val? Do you hate him? Or are you somewhere in between? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching.